if I spend my time next to Him, growing in Him, learning about Him, I'm actually learning who I am. When I was in New York, and I reference New York because a lot of things happened to me there. A lot of good things happened to me there, and a lot of things I discovered about myself there. But as well, a lot of negative things happened to me that shaped some of the way I am, some of the way I view life. And this message, I believe, started with that. And thank God I got to Springs Church and got under the messages that Pastor Leon was teaching, and it helped to shape me and mold me as well. And one of the things about when I was in New York, a lot of times people will think I'm bragging when I say this, but I have a gift working with kids. In Phoenix, Arizona, when I was there, I was on a route that was an area called Tolleson, and we were bringing kids from there, and we had over 100 kids coming on the buses from that area. And so there was a project in Phoenix, Arizona. It was one of the largest ones in Phoenix. And it was only running about 50, maybe 40, 50 kids each week. And so they wanted to move me to that bus route. And within a few weeks of me being there, we were up over 100 kids again. And so the pastor there, the children's pastor there running that bus ministry was like, man, you're like the Pied Piper. You walk into a neighborhood and kids just seem to follow you out. I don't know why. Well, I do know why. God gave me a gift to work with kids. I believe especially with inner city kids. My heart goes out to them. I just have this special love for inner city kids that I cannot explain because God placed it in me. But as well, when I was in New York and we're doing amazing things, I had 3 Sunday school routes. I had over 1,000 kids that were on my routes that I had to visit each and every week. But I had gotten myself worn out. I had been doing a lot of it on my own. I had been working at it on my own, in my own strength and in my own power. And I had some things that had happened to me that really shook me. One of them was a friend of mine went to visit her route, and her husband was actually one of my leaders that was on my team. And she came back just shaken. She'd gone into a house, and there were these 2 kids that were sitting watching cartoons. Their mom had passed away, we don't even know how many days before, and they were actually ripping at the cardboard from their cereal box and chewing on it. And shortly after that, one of my bus workers, she was 18 years old, she was a twin, and she got hit by a drunk driver. I was actually in Texas doing the children's crusade at a church, and so they phoned me, and I was on my last night, and they phoned me and they said, tomorrow we're going to fly you to Florida, where she had been vacationing with her family. And twin had been, Annette was her name, she had been hit by a drunk driver. We want you to go there and be in the hospital with her family. And the next morning when I got up, they said, we're changing the flight back to New York. She passed away. And so there were events like this that had happened that had just wore me out because I was trying to do it on my own strength. I was trying to do it on my own merit. And this is where this message, after developing and growing in my relationship with God, started to come from. And there's 3 areas that I believe I got confused, that I think sometimes we can get out of place. We don't understand exactly what each one and where it fits in our life. First is purpose. What's my purpose? Why am I here on this planet? And when I say purpose, I'm talking the big purpose, not what am I here to do. I'll get to what am I here to do under a different point. But purpose to me is the big picture. Why am I alive? Why do I exist? What is my purpose? My identity is another area. Who am I? What's my value? This third one is gifts, the things that I do, the things that God has placed in my life so that I can be used by Him to impact the people around me. I think sometimes we put as our main focus is who I am. And I think, and I'll get, again, deeper on each one of these, but I think sometimes we try to figure out who we are in our core, and we miss out how to actually get to the depths of who we really are by finding out our purpose. So I'm going to start with purpose today, and we're going to dig in, and I'm hopefully going to have enough time to get into it as deeply as I would like to. But what is my purpose? Why am I here? Why was I created? Why was I the one born to my parents? So many times we're looking for things to do when we actually have a purpose. God created us for purpose. And when we don't go to God for our purpose, it's like buying a sophisticated, piece of equipment or piece of technology and then throwing away the user's manual. Sure, you might get a little out of it, but if you actually took the time, and most of us probably don't until we want more out of it, reading the user's manual, when we go to the manual, we find out why we have that piece of equipment and all of the different things that it can do. So I looked at it and I said, let's go back to the beginning. Why was Adam and Eve created? Why would God create mankind? God created them so he could have a relationship with us. That is our reason for being alive. God created us so that the angels really have no free will. And sometimes we can get really caught up in, well, why would God allow? Because God wanted us to be able to choose him. And in that, we can oftentimes choose the wrong things as well. Because it fulfills what we think is the need in our life. But in reality, doing it God's way fulfills the need with no side effects. So many times people are chasing after a hole in their heart, but they don't realize if they would fill that with the actual relationship with God, their life would go to a whole different place because there's no shame attached to it. There's no remorse attached to your relationship with God. But if I'm going after joy and I start into a drug relationship, eventually I'm going to get to a place where I have shame or I have remorse and I want out of that relationship with drugs. But it fulfills that quick fix in our life. There's other tools and things that we will go to, things that make us feel more fulfilled. And so many times we're going to things that after we're done with it, we have this void, this emptiness inside us because we're not doing it the way God created it to be. We're stepping outside of his plan. My purpose is the relationship with God. And as I started drawing closer to him, I started realizing I was putting other things in the place of where he should be. So this luggage, we're going to use it as the example. This is my purpose. My purpose is to be close to God. My purpose is to spend time with God. My purpose, if I do nothing other than grow in my relationship with God, I'm going to have a life that is fulfilling. I can go on vacations, I can go on trips, I can do all kinds of great things to try to find satisfaction, but I will never find the satisfaction that I can have when I put my life in his hands, when I grow in my relationship with him, when I spend time with the most valuable relationship I was created for. The Bible tells us in Psalms, that we're going to go through it a little bit about God's presence in our life, and this is Old Testament. You will show me the way of life, granting me the joy of your presence and the pleasure of living with you forever. Psalms 89:15 says, blessed are those who learn to acclaim you, who walk in the light of your presence, O Lord. In the New Testament, it says this, my old self has been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. So I live in this earthly body by trusting in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. In the Old Testament, the presence of God could be around them, but he wasn't in them. When Jesus died on the cross and when the Holy Spirit came on the day of Pentecost, we have the Spirit of God in us to walk out incredible plans and purposes. Romans 8:35 says, can anything separate us from the love of God? Nothing is going to separate you from the love of God. When we live our lives seeking God, we really get to where we learn who we are. in that relationship. But so many times we're trying to find who we are, but if we were to actually go to God, we find who we are in Him. If I find who I am outside of Him, it doesn't last. So many people spend time, I've heard people say, well, you know what? I just need to go find myself. No, I actually need to get close to God and let Him show me who I am. When I spend my time in Him, living my life for Him, growing in my relationship with Him, I start to learn that I'm the head and not the tail. I'm above and not beneath. The joy of the Lord is my strength. The presence of God in my life gives me love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, kindness, self-control, and long-suffering. But so many times I'm trying to change something in my life, but I'm doing it on my own. I'm seeking it out other places. Well, if I really work hard at this, I've got it. I'm good. But if I actually were to go to God and say, God, I need your strength. I need your help. I need your presence in my life to help me have the strength to quit that area that I don't want to do anymore, to become the man I want to become for my family, for my wife, for my job, for everyone around me. If I spend my time next to Him, growing in Him, learning about Him, I'm actually learning who I am. Because self-control is an attribute of somebody who's close to Christ, walking in His Spirit, walking in His presence. But when I'm trying to figure it out on my own, my identity can get all messed up. My identity can become about all kinds of other things instead of about the truth of who I really am. We read quotes like, knowing others is wisdom, knowing yourself is enlightenment. That sounds good. But you know what? Knowing God is enlightenment. And we so easily get focused on us and on what's going on in our world and what's going on in my life. And when we take our focus off ourselves and we put it on the relationship that's the most important. This relationship is more important than my relationship with my wife. This relationship is more important than the relationship with my children. This is the most important. This relationship with God helps me to be a better husband, helps me to be a better father, helps me to live my life in a way that will impact others. Why? Because I'm able to hear Him. I'm able to listen to Him and know His strength, know His power,